The air was thick with tension as Rick and Sparrow left the black mire behind. The eerie, shifting fog had finally started to clear, but the journey ahead was still shrouded in uncertainty. The dark, oppressive environment had held its secrets, but they knew there was no time to linger. The road ahead stretched out before them, winding through a world that had twisted beyond recognition. Rick pulled the cycle from his bag, its weight reassuring as he assessed the path that lay before them. The cycle wasn't just a means of transportation, it was their connection to freedom, a way to push forward and escape the nightmares that always seemed just behind them. Sparrow stood silently, watching the horizon, waiting for Rick's lead. Rick adjusted the straps of his bag and glanced one last time at the mist-filled ground they'd left behind. Every step forward would take them deeper into the unknown. Rick swung one leg over the cycle, ready to continue the descent. Sparrow shifted behind Rick on the cycle, his voice breaking the heavy silence.
You know, Rick, I wasn't sure you'd agree to go. But I can see it in your eyes now. You know there's no turning back, don't you?
I know. I've been running from this for too long. But it's like I can never escape it. The nightmares, the creatures, they just keep coming.
That's exactly why we need to go. You've been fighting these nightmares, but you've never faced the source. The secret beginning, it's where everything started. It's the place where all of this, the nightmares, the creatures, the confusion, it all begins.
The secret beginning? What do you mean by that? How could a place solve all of this?
It's not just a place. It's a point in the dream, in the very core of this nightmare. It's where you confront everything, the memories you've buried, the things you've hidden from yourself. It's where you go to end it all. Or, where it all begins again.
You're telling me that facing this will stop the nightmares?
Yes. But it's not easy, Rick. The secret beginning isn't just a place you walk into, it's a challenge. It forces you to confront everything you've been running from, everything that's holding you back. It will push you to your limits. You've already faced the worst parts of yourself in those nightmares. You've been through the worst they can throw at you. But this is different. This is where you take back control. The nightmare only has power if you let it. But you have to face it. You have to choose to face it.
Rick gunned the cycle toward the gap in the road, not hesitating for a second. Sparrow's grip tightened in fear as the bike launched into the air, soaring over the gap. Time seemed to stretch, and Sparrow's heart pounded in his chest. The cycle hit the ground hard, skidding before stabilizing. Rick exhaled sharply, unshaken. Sparrow, still gripping him tightly, let out a breath of relief, his body stiff with fear. Next time, Sparrow muttered.
Rick, the secret beginning is where everything started. If we want answers, if we want to stop all of this, that's where we have to go. There's no running from it anymore. We need to face it, whatever it is. It's the only way.
Look, I've been through a lot, Sparrow. And every time I think I'm getting closer to the truth, it slips away. I've seen enough to know that I can't keep running from this. Whatever the secret beginning is, I know it's where I have to go. But it's not just about facing the past, it's about making sure we're ready for whatever comes next. We're not just walking into some unknown place. We're walking into something that could change everything. I need to be sure I'm ready for that. For both of us.
They enter the secret beginning. Rick moved forward, flamethrower still in hand, the heavy sound of his boots echoing in the abandoned station. Sparrow followed closely, silent and wide-eyed, her gaze darting around the decaying space. The flickering lights above cast long, eerie shadows, and the scent of burnt flesh lingered in the air, mixing with the musty, damp smell of the station. There was no sound except for the distant drip of water somewhere deeper in the station. Rick kept his eyes forward, his grip steady on the flamethrower, aware of the ominous silence that seemed to press in around them. The weight of the moment hung heavily in the air, and neither of them spoke. The silence was suffocating, filled with a tension that neither could escape. The train station stretched on, the dimly lit hallway giving way to darker, more foreboding corners. Sparrow's footsteps barely made a sound, and Rick felt the unease in the air. Every step took them deeper into the unknown. Water leaked violently from the side pipes, rushing toward Rick and Sparrow. Without hesitation, Rick pulled his shield from his back, raising it to block the powerful spray. The force of the water hit the shield with a loud hiss, but Rick pressed forward, using the shield to shield them both from the torrent. With each step, he fought against the water's pressure, moving carefully. After a tense few moments, the flow subsided. Rick lowered the shield, motioning for Sparrow to follow. They continued down the hallway, the echo of their footsteps breaking the silence. As Rick and Sparrow continued down the hallway, they reached a large waiting area. The dim light barely illuminated the space, revealing cracked benches and broken ticket booths. The air was thick with dust, but something else lingered, an eerie stillness. Suddenly, Rick froze, his eyes scanning the shadows. In the far corner of the room, he saw movement. A zombie, its decayed body hunched and slow, shuffled forward. Its eyes were empty, glazed over, as it dragged itself closer, a low growl rumbling from deep within its throat. Rick didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, flamethrower ready, and with a swift motion, unleashed a jet of flame. The fire engulfed the zombie, its ragged body quickly succumbing to the blaze, letting out a shrill, agonizing scream before collapsing in a heap of ashes. The room fell silent once more. Rick lowered the flamethrower, his gaze scanning the area to make sure no others were lurking in the shadows. The threat was clear, and for now, it was gone. He nodded to Sparrow, signaling her to keep moving forward. Rick and Sparrow boarded the train to the next station. As it slowed to a stop, they stepped off onto the platform and spotted 6 infected wandering nearby. Without hesitation, Rick drew his assault rifle and unleashed a blast of fire. The first infected crumbled instantly, and Rick moved swiftly, clearing the others one by one. The bullets killed them, leaving only ashes behind. The platform was quiet again, the smell of burnt flesh lingering in the air. Rick nodded at Sparrow, ready to move forward. Rick and Sparrow made their way through the station, their footsteps echoing in the silence. As they approached a clearing, they saw a figure standing in the center, an enigmatic woman. Her presence was striking, almost otherworldly, as she stood with an air of confidence and power. Her eyes glinted in the dim light, and her dark, flowing hair framed her face perfectly. "Green Snake," Sparrow whispered, her voice tense. Rick's eyes narrowed. This was no ordinary enemy. The name alone sent a chill down his spine. Green Snake was known for her ruthless cunning, her beauty masking the danger she posed. Without warning, Rick pulled out his assault rifle and aimed directly at her. He fired, the rapid bursts of gunfire echoing through the station. The bullets whizzed through the air, tearing toward Green Snake, but she moved with incredible speed, dodging and evading with an almost unnatural grace. Rick gritted his teeth, tightening his grip on the rifle as he fired again. The woman smiled coldly, her eyes locking onto his with an unsettling calm. Despite the gunfire, she moved with a deadly, fluid motion, every step calculated, every move precise. But Rick wasn't backing down. He continued to shoot, his determination unwavering. The battle between them had just begun, and Rick knew this would be unlike any fight he had faced before. As Rick's bullets continued to fire, Green Snake quickly spun and sprinted, her movements swift and calculated. With a cold smile, she vanished into the shadows of the station, disappearing from sight. "Damn it!" Rick muttered, his eyes scanning the darkness. Without wasting another moment, he gripped his assault rifle tightly and sprinted after her, ignoring the pounding in his chest. Sparrow followed closely behind, staying on high alert. They raced down the hall, the sound of their footsteps echoing through the station. Suddenly, the ground beneath them started to shake, and a loud hiss of water filled the air. Rick looked ahead and saw it, a burst of water gushing from broken pipes, the pressure sending the liquid flooding across the floor. Green Snake's trail led right into the water's path. Rick didn't hesitate. He grabbed his shield and positioned it in front of him, using it to block the rush of water as he waded forward. The water hit the shield with force, but Rick pushed forward, the shield protecting him as he crossed to the other side, keeping his eyes fixed on the dark figure of Green Snake ahead. She was already moving faster, but Rick wasn't far behind. The chase was on, and he wasn't about to let her escape. 6 revenants appeared, emerging from the shadows with eerie, hollow eyes and disfigured forms. The station was suddenly filled with their guttural growls and slow, menacing movements. They shuffled forward, blocking the path to the train. Rick's grip tightened on his assault rifle as he quickly assessed the situation. There was no time to hesitate. He opened fire, his bullets tearing through the air. One by one, the revenants fell, their bodies jerking and twitching as the rounds hit their marks. But they kept coming, relentless and unyielding. Sparrow stayed behind him, her gaze focused on their movements. Rick fired again, dropping 2 more, but the last few continued to advance, their twisted limbs reaching out for him. With a determined look, Rick switched to his flamethrower, unleashing a fiery blast that engulfed the remaining revenants. Their forms disintegrated in the flames, their screams silenced as they turned to ash. The area was clear once more, the smell of burning flesh heavy in the air. Rick lowered his flamethrower, checking to ensure the path was safe before nodding to Sparrow. "Let's move," he said, and together, they boarded the train, heading toward the next challenge. As Rick and Sparrow reached the platform, the sight of Green Snake hanging by her neck in the shadows froze them in place. A mysterious figure held her up effortlessly, his face obscured by the flickering lights. Green Snake struggled, but the figure's grip didn't loosen. Rick didn't hesitate, he raised his assault rifle and fired. The bullets tore through the air, but the figure twisted unnaturally, dodging each shot. With a flick of his hand, the platform lights shattered into darkness. The station fell silent. Rick's eyes narrowed as he gripped his rifle tighter. Then, out of the shadows, the figure lunged. Rick barely dodged, feeling the air shift as the attack grazed past him. He's invisible in the dark, Rick thought, already moving. His boots pounded across the platform as he sprinted toward the nearest switchboard. Reaching out, he flipped the first switch. A dim light flickered to life over part of the platform, but the figure wasn't there. Suddenly, Rick was struck from behind. He stumbled, slamming against the wall, his rifle clattering at his side. The invisible figure wasn't letting him turn the lights back on so easily. Rick pushed forward, racing to the second switch across the station. He flipped it, another light hummed on, illuminating more of the space. The faint outline of the figure shimmered briefly before fading again. The third switch was farther down. Rick moved fast, but the figure intercepted him, slamming him into the railing. Rick grunted, spinning and getting attacked by Unseen. He threw tactical into the dark, hitting nothing but empty air. Finally, Rick reached the last switch, flipping it with force. The station blazed back to life, revealing the mysterious figure standing at the far end of the platform, partially scorched and bleeding from Rick's earlier shots. Rick raised his rifle and fired. The figure jerked back as the bullets struck, each hit slowing him down. Click. Rick's rifle ran dry. No more ammo. The figure staggered but didn't fall. With his last reserves of strength, he disappeared into the shadows, his cold laughter echoing through the station as he slipped away. Rick exhaled heavily, lowering his empty weapon. Sparrow approached cautiously, glancing at the flickering lights. "He's still out there," she said softly. Rick nodded. "Next time, he won't get away." Rick left Sparrow behind, his mind heavy with frustration, and walked back to camp alone, the weight of unfinished battles pressing on his shoulders. As Rick walked the stairs beside helipad and come down, tugging at the edges of his coat. Each step felt heavier, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of unfinished business pressing on his mind. He is walking near the fountain, but his thoughts stayed locked in the station he'd left behind. I should have taken him down. I had him. The image of the mysterious figure flickered in his head, dodging bullets with unnatural grace, vanishing into the dark like smoke. Rick could still feel the cold echo of that sinister laugh reverberating in his chest. His knuckles whitened around the strap of his rifle. I can't let this sit. He'll come back, they always do. His eyes narrowed as his boots crunched against the gravel. Sparrow was capable, but Rick still felt uneasy leaving her alone. Rick started gathering oranges thinking about Sparrow. She's safer there. If he circles back, at least she'll be ready. But if he follows me... The thought trailed off as Rick exhaled sharply. He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. That figure wasn't just another infected or scavenger. He was something else, something dangerous. Who the hell was he? And why did he go after Green Snake? Questions piled up, but no answers followed. Rick's focus snapped back to the road ahead. The manor gates creaked faintly in the distance, but the cold certainty in his chest told him that the night wasn't through with him yet. Next time, I won't miss. Rick stepped through the creaking doors of the manor, the air inside stale and heavy with dust. The faint glow from the broken chandeliers barely lit the grand hall, casting long shadows that seemed to follow him as he walked. His footsteps echoed softly, but his thoughts were louder. I should have ended it back at the station. I had the shot. The image of the mysterious figure slipping away gnawed at him. Each time Rick replayed it in his head, the weight of failure pressed down harder. He reached the elevator, pressing the call button with a sigh. He stepped inside, leaning against the back wall. The flickering light overhead did little to break the gloom settling in his chest. Feels like I'm chasing shadows. Sparrow's out there, and I'm stuck in here. The elevator rattled as it climbed. Each floor passed in silence, but Rick felt none of the usual focus that kept him sharp. By the time the doors slid open on the 4th floor, his mind felt distant, lost somewhere between frustration and doubt. Gotta pull it together. He stepped out. The manor was quiet, but Rick knew the night wasn't done testing him. Rick slammed his fists onto the piano keys, the angry, jarring notes echoing through the room. His breath came in sharp, ragged bursts as his mind replayed the lies, the betrayal. She thought she could get away with it. Walk away, leave me behind. His hands pounded harder, the sound of the piano's groan drowning in his fury. I gave her everything. And she gave me nothing. The bitterness still burning in his chest. Rick's fingers drifted over the piano keys, the soft hum of the manor pressing in around him. The note rang out, sharp and hollow, followed by another. Slowly, the melody took shape, not gentle, but tense, each chord heavier than the last. His jaw tightened. She used to sit right there, watching me play like nothing was wrong. The music darkened, his hands moving with more force. Every strike of the keys felt like hitting back at something unseen, something he'd been holding down for far too long. Lying through her teeth, smiling like I couldn't see it. Rick's eyes narrowed as the bitterness surged. The notes stumbled, but he didn't stop, the mistakes only feeding the fire twisting inside him. She walked away easy. Left me to clean up everything. His fingers slammed the final chord, the sound echoing violently through the empty room. Rick sat there, hands resting on the keys, chest rising and falling with slow, simmering breaths. I don't even know why I'm thinking about her. She's nothing now. The piano creaked as he stood, shoving the bench back without care. Rick's fists tightened at his sides, leaving the piano, and the memories, behind in silence. Rick stumbled to the bed, his body heavy with exhaustion, but his mind too restless to find peace. He collapsed onto the mattress, the weight of the day pressing down on him harder than he expected. His hands clenched the sheets, pulling them tight as if trying to hold on to something, anything. I can't keep doing this fight, this rage. He turned onto his side, staring at the wall, his breath shallow and uneven. The darkness seemed to close in around him, the anger and regret swirling together, suffocating him. Just sleep. Forget it for a while. But sleep didn't come. Not the kind of rest he needed. His eyes stayed open, staring into the void as his thoughts raced, dragging him deeper into the night.